All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have Jemellah Coes. Am I saying that right? Jemellah
That's
Coes
it.
today. She is a very accomplished educator. She is the 2014 Georgia Teacher of the Year, and she's currently a professor at UGA and is at Mount Holyoke College.
That's right.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on here today, Jemellah.
Glad to be here.
All right. So the first question is just how have you been managing with COVID? I know it's been a rough patch for all of us, but I think, like you said, there are a few bright spots within this pandemic. So how's it all?
Mhm. Yeah, so how have I been managing? I have been managing pretty okay. We were lucky to not have any family members to get significantly ill. So that's been helpful in managing. We just as a family, we and as a community, a school community, we have been able to shift our attention to the things that matter the most, and to redirect our attention to things that we sort of lost along the way. So ideals, values, what our mission, vision was, and we were able to refocus because everyone had time to just stop and think and reflect and return to what their passion was, return to where their heart led them. So, yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's been all
great.
right.
Yeah, that's really good. And then also just tell me a little about yourself, your background. I know you're very involved within the teaching community, so tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I'm a professor at the University of Georgia as well as at Mount Holyoke College. And I teach teachers. So I teach teachers how to teach. And I teach them how to advocate for themselves. So I teach a class on education advocacy, but I also teach in disability studies. So I teach interdisciplinarily, where I teach lots of professionals about disability because disability spans across all job markets, all like entities, all walks of life, all of those things. So I also teach disability studies. I also support teachers in their classroom to try new projects, different projects, and to think about their practice intentionally, especially as it relates to anti-racist education, equity, social justice, um, gender identity, equality, all of the things, disability, um, that we know are important to attend to and to think about as we are educating the next generation.
Wow, that is awesome. I love that you focus on like advocacy. I think that is a great thing that we do need to incorporate more in like our school environments. So I love that. So to touch a little bit upon, the disability education, I'm actually a little bit involved in, the special needs community as well. I started my own club this year at my school called the Hearts of Gold Society, where it's kind of a mentoring program where students at my school are able to mentor special needs kids, especially in autism, in my special needs community in Johns Creek, Georgia. So, it's I love teaching these kids because I think they're so unique. I think it's so cool that they don't let their disability really hinder them a lot, even though it does sometimes. They are still so like motivated and they're so smart. And I just love teaching them, being able to have other students being able to be involved in this community as well. So tell us a little bit more about, what you've learned educating special needs children, as well as, teaching other teachers on how to educate them.
So the biggest thing that I've learned is that they have a whole lot more to teach me than I have to teach
That is
them.
true.
I even hesitate to say them because the frame that I use for disability is that disability is a part of the human experience, right? So there's not a disability, there is a difference, right? So there's a different way to experience the world. And I try to encourage teachers and all professionals to see it as just that. So as we have different hair color, eye color, we just have differences. And those differences are not deficit, they are just different. So to just think of people with various disabilities as human and as part of our community and as just as capable, even more so in many ways, just as thoughtful and more so in many ways. And think about ways that ableism within our society is actually what prevents people from moving forward rather than any disability being the hindrance to progress.
Yeah, most definitely. Um, so what has been one of the greatest challenges or obstacles you had to overcome in your, entire teaching career, basically?
Let's see, challenges to overcome. I think one of the major challenges to overcome, um, so a few challenges. One, specifically as it relates to disability, I have a friend, her name is Tracy Rackensberger, and she has cerebral palsy, so she uses a wheelchair and she uses a communication device. And what she always says is that people don't have to overcome their disability. What people need to overcome, or what society should overcome, is their exceedingly low expectations of people with disabilities. So I think one challenge is to help people to overcome their expectations of what disability looks like and what how disability affects people and their expectations for people with disabilities. But the other thing, and that's a challenge that I have had to overcome in education widely, because many educators don't have the background in disability studies, right? So being in community with and educating and learning with people with disabilities is new for many educators. So helping them to overcome those implicit biases they hold, um, and to helping them recognize that, like, we all have implicit biases and it's important that we attend to them. And that actually spans across all of our differences, right? So that spans across race and religion and gender identity. And so just helping colleagues to really figure out what their role is in helping students to understand the world of difference that's around us. Um, Another challenge that I had to overcome would be time, right? Like just having enough time and managing my time well,
Mhm.
in order to do all the things that I think that I need to do and want to do, and uh, things that bring me joy. But I think I figured that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you talk about, time is a very big. I mean, people say time is of the essence. It truly is. I think people who like I can tell that you're someone who's very, self-motivated and wants to get a lot accomplished. I can just tell with the list of accomplishments that you've already have. But I do think that, like time management and being able to, do what you love and focus on your passions more than, making yourself do things that you don't want to is extremely important in managing your time. So I love that you touched on that. So besides challenges, what are some of the highlights of your career as a teacher in
Oh
education?
man, some of the highlights, just, I mean, connecting with students and learning from students. That is a huge highlight for me. That's why I do what I do. I love to learn. And I love to learn about other people. And I love to learn about the experiences of other people, and like what they're thinking, feeling, doing, believing. All of those things are important to me and I value them greatly. I am a learner, right? So I love to read and engage with people. I love humans too, right? I just love the human connection.
Mhm.
Um, so learning with students and in various age groups, right? Like you can learn from anyone, and being able to teach, especially middle schoolers, because that was my focus when I was in the K-12 classroom, was middle school. I love their perspectives on the world. I love watching them process and learn new things, um, and I love watching their journey moving forward. So technology affords us the opportunity to sort of keep up with students in ways that were not possible before. So once my students get off to, like, once, now that I'm no longer in the K-12 setting, I see a lot of them on social media. And I see how life is going, and I can catch up with them and see how their families are going, and all of the things. So that brings me a great deal of joy,
Mhm.
um, just to watch them thrive, watch them grow, learn, change. So.
Yeah. Some of my that's I think that's so true. I think some of my favorite teachers have been the ones who are, a lot more open with their students. They're able to talk about, experiences besides just like the curriculum we have to learn at
Mhm.
school. And yeah, those connections that you can make with teachers are so, so special. I know like a lot of my middle school and elementary school teachers, I still have them the impact they've made on me are definitely still exist. And yeah, I wouldn't we wouldn't be here without all the amazing educators like you. All right. What is let me see. I know like you are an educator to other educators. So what is that kind of dynamic like being able to teach other future teachers?
So it's a huge, I think sometimes the gravity of it weighs on me heavily from time to time because I am potentially affecting change in the lives of 30 times the students that I would have been able to touch, right? So I am teaching their teachers how to teach students. So what I teach is extremely important to like creating the society we all want to be a part of. So I carry that responsibility very heavily, but I also recognize that what's happening in education and what's happening in the world is ever changing. So it's also very important to stay current and abreast of what's happening in
Mhm.
order to give the best insights, advice, encouragement, supports, all of those things to the teachers who are practicing every single day.
Yeah. I think, yeah, that is so important to be able to stay on top of everything going on. I think that kind of is a benefit of COVID where, we are kind of forced to accept the reality of our situations and forced to learn about what's going on besides in our, bubble, community bubbles. I think before COVID, I barely read the news. I really never knew what was going on besides in the world. But after COVID hit, I really had to, accept the reality we were in, and then I really wanted to start, learning about everything that's happening around us. So I think that's so important to be able to be educated about everything in order to, educate others. So
A
yeah.
very another dim-ish, bright-ish spot of COVID
Yeah.
um, is now having, having the world open up to us and like paying attention,
Mhm.
having to like, this is what's happening,
Yeah.
um, and having to connect with that and reckon with that, right? And think about what that means for what we do and what we've been doing for so long. So.
Mhm. All right. Yes. So I was reading your bio, and you said you were a first generation college student. Am I correct on that?
Mhm,
So,
that's right.
what was
Mhm.
that?
No, go ahead. Yep, that's right.
And your parents are also immigrants, which I think is so, so cool. And that's something you can kind of relate on. My parents are also, um, I think they would see it, yeah, they would be first generation immigrants. They came here to America to go to college. And then I think I would be second generation
So
college.
you're first generation. So if they came from another country,
Uh-huh.
you're the first generation American.
Yeah, I'm first generation American. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So tell me a little about that experience. How old were you? Or wait, no, you were born in America, but
I
how
was born.
your parents when they came here, and give a little background on the story behind that.
Sure. So my dad got here when he was, I think he was 18.
Mhm,
And my mom got here, and we just recently had this conversation. Again, she was 14 when she got here,
mhm,
and her mom had come up 2 years before her, sort of to work and make money to sort of build a life for them. So she stayed behind her and her six other siblings, and their father. They stayed in Guyana, which is in the Caribbean. It's on the continent of South America, but it has Caribbean culture.
mhm,
Um, and so she moved here when she was 14 and met my dad. They actually met in their home country of Guyana, but they, connected when they were here in America.
mhm,
Um, and they moved to New York when they got here, and they lived in New York for quite a few years. My sister was born. And then a little while after I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And then when I was about 3 or 4, we moved to Georgia,
mhm,
which is, where I am now. And it was just interesting growing up with Caribbean parents because while I am Black and I identify as Black, I don't necessarily identify as African American. I specifically identify as African Caribbean American
Mhm.
because my Caribbean heritage is deeply ingrained in a lot of like my beliefs and a lot of like the ways that I show up in the world. So I think it's important to connect with that and like be all of who I am, which is all of those things. Um, so it was interesting being Black and being Black and appearing to be African American when they're just very a little variance in culture and values uh, between different cultures, which we know like any culture there's variance, but
Yeah.
growing up in it was is interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, so how did you kind of, balance accepting American culture? Well, you came here pretty young, but how did you accept the American culture while also still embracing your Caribbean roots?
Yeah, good question. So for a long time, I sort of ignored that part of me, right? As much as I could. But remember, my parents are, they are Caribbean. They are Caribbeans living in America.
Yeah.
So they found groups of other Caribbean parents where we would participate in all sorts of events within our culture. So we were always interested. The food that my mom cooked
Mhm.
was traditionally Caribbean. Um, the people we hung out with, the activities that we did, a lot of it was largely Caribbean,
Yeah.
particularly after school. As I got a little bit older and I started to do after school activities at school, that's when I would say that my attention sort of shifted focus to becoming more Americanized. And I wanted to do all of the things that my American friends were doing.
Yeah.
So I sort of, um, I sort of distanced myself from my Caribbean heritage for a long time. So that probably occurred from middle school um, to college, early college, right?
Mhm.
But then when you get to college, you realize how cool it is to have like a different culture, background, heritage. And you're like, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute. I'm Caribbean, right? So like I think I left it behind for a little while, even though like it's entrenched, like it's part of who I am.
Mhm.
But I wanted to fit in. So I did a lot of the things that I felt like I needed to do, including not making it as a big part of my life, as big a part of my life as it actually was. But
Mhm.
then, once you get in college, like I said, it's cool to be, you know, all of the things that you are. So I re-embraced that, and still hold true to it. So I'm gonna have kids now, and they don't know as much about Caribbean culture as I would like them to know. Um, but their grandparents are still living and they still teach them and engage them in the culture as much as possible.
Yeah, I love that story. I think that's a similar situation with me, a little bit different because I live in Johns Creek, Georgia, and we actually have a very, very large Asian American population.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. I go to Chattahoochee High School, and I think it's like 26% Asian American, so it's very, very large. Yeah, and I love that about our community. It's very diverse. So, I never was afraid of embracing my Chinese culture. I'm Chinese American, by the way. So because it was basically all around me. We have like international night where we have you know Chinese culture. I probably is like one of the largest ones there. So very embracing that in that situation, and also after, yeah, like you said, after school activities. I think the after school I went to, daycare I went to when I was younger was like a Chinese run business. And then yeah, it's just like the restaurants all around us. Boba tea is boba tea shops are all around our community and just stuff like that. It's been very ingrained in me, my Chinese culture. So I really love that about my community that I live in. And yeah, I think I really wish that more uh minorities in general around the world can have this opportunity to fully embrace their cultures and their roots.
That's awesome that you were surrounded by it. It's so important.
Yeah.
to like continually embrace it, especially when you're around people. And that's one of the things that one of the reasons that I wish we stayed in New York, right? Because New York is,
Mhm.
it is, I mean, in Brooklyn, New York specifically, Brooklyn, Manhattan, like the cities
Uh-huh.
are they are diverse, right?
Yeah.
So it would have been easy to retain all of my Caribbean culture and
Mhm.
to really embrace it fully the entire time because I have cousins who are there and they continue to fully embrace. I mean, they did throughout their lifetime embrace their Caribbean culture and their kids embrace it and all of the things. But living in a place where uh, that is not we are not as surrounded with the culture. It makes it more difficult. So
It is. Yeah, sure. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is kind of related to my platform, competing in the Miss America program. Each title holder has a platform that they advocate for. So mine is called hashtag Step Out, Step Up, and it's all about encouraging teenagers to step outside of their comfort zones and to establish this growth mindset. So not being afraid of failure and not knowing and not thinking that failure defines who they are. So um, what is something that has made you step outside of your comfort zone, and how do you continue to do that? Like, stay out of your comfort zone as you grow older.
that's a really good question. Let me think about stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm comfortable in a lot of zones. So that's what makes this tricky.
Mhm.
Um, Let me think about where I am most uncomfortable, and that might give me a good starting place.
Yeah.
Um, I think I am most uncomfortable with talking about issues of equity and justice with people who have had a very monolithic experience and
Mhm.
are reluctant to embrace the idea um, that injustice occurs across lines of difference. So that is a place of discomfort for me, but a place that I still embrace. So I would say I step out of my comfort zone because remember I'm a teacher and I teach like not beyond like being a professor and just teaching teachers and like being in the classroom. I also do a lot of professional development,
Mhm.
and as you know, we are turn on the news and we are living in a very racialized society and we have some significant problems with racial injustice happening. So a lot of groups are starting to talk about race in ways that they haven't before, and they are often looking for people to help to help their educators or their business leaders or their business or their staff talk about issues of race and like think about what that means for their own practice. So um, sometimes I go into spaces where they are not interested in talking about it, right? So I sometimes I think that like everybody has to be ready. Look at what's happening. We don't like what's happening, right? Everybody. Um, and I go into those spaces and I'm like, oh wait, no, you don't think that is racial injustice occurs. So then like having to navigate how to talk to people and not convince them because it's not a convince thing. It's just like opening a door to opportunity, right? Opening a door for them to experience and to see for themselves because that's really the only way to like that people start to think differently and do things differently is when they see it for themselves and understand it for themselves. So um I just do a lot of reflecting, thinking about like trying to take on as much as I can, understanding the perspectives that they may come from and why they have them,
Mhm.
and then just seeing how I can like navigate the conversations that surround tough topics.
Yes, I think that's so important. I think, yeah, it is a tough. I know for a lot of people, it is just a tough thing to talk about because we haven't talked about it before. I think that's the main problem. The past like I don't know how many years, like it's just been like something that people don't talk about in the workplace. People don't talk about at school, especially. Like I feel like we never talk about race at school because we just, we kind of ignore it, even though it's right in front of us. Um, So yes, I think it's just so important to, empathize and understand and listen. I feel like people just don't listen. Like when you talk about, your experiences, a lot of people just, they're like, okay, I haven't experienced that, so it doesn't affect me. So,
Right.
I just don't listen. So yeah, I think be able to, come from a place of understanding and yeah, opening your ears to other people's situations and under using your like human empathy to understand where they're coming from is so important when talking about stuff related to race. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so what are some goals that you have set for yourself or some past goals that you've set and what has been your main like method to, achieve your goals?
It's so funny because I have this ongoing goal of finishing a book that I started, like that my dissertation is supposed to become a book. Um, it's been 3 years and it has not become a book yet. So like when you say goal, I'm like, that's still a goal and it is not moving. So I do need to like revisit how to get it to move because it's not moving right now. Um, so that's an ongoing goal. As for other goals that I've had, um, I rarely set a specific goal. I don't know what that's about, right? Because even in my teaching, like I teach goal setting, I teach it. Yeah, I rarely intentionally set a goal. My because my goal is always to like do the best that I can do, right? Like be the best like I'm always preparing um for all of the possibilities. So I'm always in deep study, I'm always in deep conversation, I'm always in deep reflection. And then things just sort of fall into place because I'm always in like a prep mode sort of, right? Like a preparing for excellence or being as excellent as I can be. Um I am really trying to think of some goals here. And I'm like, why don't I have any goals? I think, okay. So one goal that I think that I have um, every semester is always to inspire my students to, particularly as I teach disability studies, is to do something with their learning, right? So this semester, how am I going to light a fire under students who have not had any experience with disability. They don't have any knowledge of disability. What am I going to do to spark that? And for me, it has been time and time again building relationships with students so that I can reach them in ways that other people or other experiences might not have been able to reach them. Um, so I think I'm always setting goals in my mind, right? But I'm never like super intentional about speaking them or like doing them like doing them explicitly. It's just something that's a natural part of my continued journey to excellence. So.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that probably could just be like short-term goals, like the goals you just have like in the moment. Which I think are yeah, for me, no, definitely me too. I don't have like I guess like very long-term goals. I want to have like be like have a steady job in the future, stuff like that and get to go to college and stuff like that. But there's no like specific goal in the future that I really want to achieve. But yeah, like you said, it's just the daily things, the things I'm already working on, school. I'm a dancer too. I dance, in the pageant world. Just everything is just doing the best I can in that moment is important. So touching on, teaching. So you said that you try to educate your students on dealing with other kids with disabilities. Is that what you were saying?
So it's just to light a fire to advocate for disability, right? So advocate for disability wide term. So not necessarily people with disabilities, but like the institution of like disability more generally speaking,
Okay.
right? So I'm thinking about how do I get them to think intentionally about building structures, right? How do I get them to think about how clothing or like fashion or anything impedes people from disability with engaging in the world fully. So my goal is always to how am I going to get you to see, sort of take off the ableist lens that we all come to the table with if you don't have it, particularly if you don't have a disability. how do I get you to take that off so that we can like sort of what Procter and Gamble calls widen the screen, so that we can see a fuller picture of the impact of our work and our thought and um, yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, so are you like teaching these like younger students on this kind of stuff?
So they're college students, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
they are 18 to 22 for
Mhm.
disability. And then the educators that I teach are, 22 to
Yeah.
80, 90, like however old. Um, and so yeah, so they're college students who are about to go into the workforce.
Okay.
Yep.
So, how do you incorporate like race and, disabilities and all of these like conversations within, still teaching like the core curriculum, I guess, of, educating others?
So all of that's a part of it. Like if I am not teaching those things, like what am I actually teaching, right?
Yeah.
Like I always find it interesting when people are like, well, I can't talk about race, I teach science. I'm like, if you are not thinking about how race is specifically embedded into science, I'm not even sure what you're teaching, especially because we are living in a world that has racial injustice. And if we want people to be thinking about how to change that, we have to be embedding it in our curriculum.
Yeah.
So it's embedded in my curriculum. I talk about people, I talk about the world, I talk about like what's fair, what's not fair, why this is history, like the history of it.
Mhm.
I think that's really important. I think a lot of us misunderstand history. Because if we understood history well, we could better understand what we are currently seeing. So history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it does often rhyme. So if we can understand what we've seen and where we've been, we can understand why what we are seeing are mirrors of that rather than and we need to see how we can change them into windows into our future rather than mirrors of where we have been.
Yeah. Yeah. History used to be my one of my favorite subjects. And, I do feel like um in like elementary school, middle school, and I did learn about like the early American history. I do feel like they don't they don't focus on the issues of like racial injustice, and I don't think they focus on it enough. And like when we are talking about it, I don't think they emphasize the severity of the situations that happened in the past enough. So I do think that is something that the educational system, I guess, still needs to be working on. And I love that you
Mhm.
are one of those people who are educating the future educators on how to incorporate these topics into the core curriculum. So I love that. Let's see. How do you're a very accomplished educator. So how do you manage, balancing, school life, maybe like before when you were still in college, and then, family life, and then job life? It's a very busy life of yours, I can tell. So how do you balance everything and manage your time?
Oh man. So if you'd have asked me this 2 years, you know what? Okay, so here, so after college, it was hard. It was
Mhm.
hard to balance everything. I mean, every moment in life has really tough changes to adjust to, right? So like graduating from college, now I have a career, and I am responsible for educating middle schoolers, right? Designing their curriculum, implementing their curriculum, counseling them in many ways.
Mhm.
Um, and that was hard. And then I started a family and I had one kid, and I was like, this is really hard. And then I went back to school, having the kid and a family, and I'm like, this is really hard. And then I had another kid with my family. So it's me, my husband, my two daughters, and I'm like, this
Mhm.
is still really, really hard. And it's and I think at every stage in life, I thought it was too hard. I was like, this is too hard. This is too much. But then another stage came and I was like, well, this is harder. So what was So what was that? That wasn't hard at all. um, so I think that now that I know that that's the pattern, right? Like now that I know that things feel hard when I get started in them, I can figure out how to sort of temper it so that I'm like, I'm not overwhelmed by it, right? Because I know that things will change and it will be different. And it's not necessarily hard, it's just different and figuring out ways to adjust. And figuring out what boundaries I have, right? So I am now at a point in my career where I only do the things that I really want to do, the things that bring me joy, the things that bring me light, the things that I think bring light to the world.
Mhm.
Um, and I've just been lucky, honestly, to be able to have that option to do that. Um, and that helps protect a lot of my time and like family and career. So I'm intentional about like do the things that I love. Um, mm, and if there's something like that I have to do that I don't love, like I'll do it, I'll do it, but you know, then I reward myself in some ridiculous way, like, but I think yeah, also just recognizing like life is long. I mean, potentially, hopefully. We all wish for a long life, or many of us wish for a long life. Um, so like thinking about what I can get done, what should be done in those moments, and then like everything else it'll fall into place when it's time. So
Yeah. I think that's good advice that, not that it gets harder in the future, but like it's just like a moment in time right now. And, as a student, it does get pretty stressful. Managing academics, it's school is stressful. It's especially, I think in my community, it's the schools that are here are very, very competitive. So it is hard, balancing extracurriculars in school and everything. Um, to be honest, I am pretty stressed a lot of the times, especially now it's final season, AP exams coming up. It is very stressful. So, do you have any advice for not only students, but just people in general who are on how to deal with stress? Because it can be very, traumatizing and scary at sometimes.
so April is National Stress Awareness Month.
Oh, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
And it is stressful for many people because of all of the things that you mentioned, especially school,
Mhm.
for many students. Like there's just a lot going on in this season. Like I don't know if you have prom this month as well, or if your schools are doing prom this year or what's happening, but there's a lot going on for students, especially during this time of the year, which means there's a lot going on for parents, which means it's a lot going on in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, and um, dealing with stress, I always think about what brings me joy, right? So there's this balance of um, robust, um, difficult experiences, but then I find where joy is central, right? Where can I always go to? Like, what is my sacred place? What is my safe harbor of joy? Um, and I seek that place out intentionally. Um, planning all of the things and then saying, and this is the milestone you need to reach in order to embrace that safe harbor fully.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing that I tell people to do that I don't do that I really should do is plan out as much as I can in advance so that I'm not biting off a big chunk of something um, right when it's go time, right? Like not when something is due or not the day before or hour before a presentation, but like weeks as much planning as I can in advance so that I don't feel stressed and overwhelmed. I've also become a super advocate of delegating or asking for help.
Mhm.
So as much help as I can get, I try to seek that out, and that's not something that I've always done. In fact, it's until maybe in the last 5 years, I've really thought of the importance of asking for help. I've done it a little bit along the ways, but these last 5 years, I have figured out ways to ask for what I need. And if I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't, and then I'll figure that out too, right? But asking for help is definitely the first step in a more successful and stress-free journey for me.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I think, me, I am someone who doesn't want to be a burden to other people. I feel like that's a lot like a hindrance when people like don't ask for help. They just don't want to be like bothering other people. But yeah, I do think it's important to, know your place and be like and know that you have worth, and from that coming from that kind of point of view, you can, ask for help when you do need it.
Mhm.
Um so when talking about like this kind of stuff, I know that, stress can be um kind of kind of there because people are afraid of failure as well. They want to succeed at something and they're afraid to fail. With my platform, it's a lot about like having this growth mindset and not being afraid of failure, and not seeing it as something that brings you down, but instead that it's a not yet kind of mindset. So how do you cope with failure if you do truly fail at something? How do you, get back up and continue in persevering?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I there's a quote, and I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like, I either succeed or learn. I don't fail. So
Oh.
I think reframing failure in itself
Mhm,
might be helpful for people who are exceedingly stressed due to a fear of failure.
mhm.
So thinking about what does failure mean? Did you learn something, or did you just not succeed and you learn nothing? Because that's very different than not succeeding at what you wanted to succeed, but learning a whole lot so that next time you embark on something, you have learned. You've had a valuable life experience in some way that you have that you can, use as you go forward in life. Um, so to people who when I have failed, you know what? It depends on what I failed at, or what I've learned from, right? So
Mhm.
not failed, but learned. Sometimes like I just take a minute to just be sad about it. Like like I
Yeah,
feel all the feels. Like
yeah.
I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm angry, and whatever the emotion is that comes along with the disappointment that likely ensued. Um, and then I get back at it, right? Because like, what's the other option? Like, I don't want to do nothing. It's just
Mhm.
not a part of like my being and who I am. I mean, I think that's part of it too. Is um, I am willing to not succeed. I am willing to just learn um, in order to be better. So sometimes you learn a lot more from not succeeding than you do from actually succeeding, and having the opportunity to do something different, having the opportunity to do something better. Um, so yeah, I look at them as opportunities to do something different after, of course, I'm sad or angry or upset.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I like that you said that, take the time to be sad or be upset, because I feel like a lot of people, with social media and everything, they try to put on this like front that everything's go go go, everything's happy happy all the time, when truly it's not. We're all human, we feel all emotions. So, what's I like dedicate certain like weeks, times of the week where I can just like cry. Like most of the time it's in the shower because that is like the most comforting place for me to cry. But like, yeah, no, just like really embracing your emotions and not like being scared to be sad is, important as well.
hmm. And I
Um,
think that when we show vulnerability, it gives
yeah.
other people a way to show vulnerability without feeling like they're alone, because they're not,
Mhm.
right? Like you said, we all feel all of the emotions. And to know that other people who succeed or don't succeed their first time or the second time or third time or eighth time or 12th time,
Mhm.
they also feel, um, sort of gives us permission in a way to embrace those feelings.
Yes. Uh, all right. So I'm going to ask a few more questions and we'll wrap this up. But who is someone that you look up to, a role model in your life?
Hmm. So, oh, that's a really good question. So I have a lot, I've got a list. that I look up to, because I think that we look up to different people for different things. So if I'm thinking about my career, my academic career, there are scholars and writers, Bettina Love and Cynthia Dillard, that I look up to. If I'm thinking about how I build a community, then it's Harriet Sanford, it is um, Catherine Bassett, like just other phenomenal women and people that I've come in contact with. Um, if I'm looking for people who will challenge me, like if I'm looking for, like, I look up to people who challenge me because I need to be challenged, right? Like I don't want to just be saying stuff and everybody's like, yeah, that's right. Like, no, I want somebody to push you back and say, have you thought of this? Or you sort of missed this, right? So
Yeah.
if I'm thinking about that, then like my sister always does that. So I look up to her for that. I think of like um and other colleagues that I work with that are just really smart and bright, that have various experiences. So I think I look up to quite a few people for different things. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any specific women that you think really like help you embrace like women empowerment or anything like that?
Hmm. So I I am not necessarily so okay. As far as like famous women leaders, like that
Mhm.
are famous, um, I mean, so I think it's so in my mind and my approach to it is always that it's more um it makes more sense to embrace the women that are around me that are not necessarily famous but that are doing excellent work. Um But like women, like, I mean, they're always powerful women, right? Like there's Michelle Obama, and there is some people that I do really look up to. I just thought about it are like the women in politics, like or politics or on the news, like Angela Rye and
Mhm.
Stacey Abrams, and like really powerful Black women,
Mhm.
right? So like women who look like me and who are trailblazing in any way. And those include women that are right around, next door, outside, like wherever, right? Um, but yeah, all of the women that are like speaking truth to power and pushing back against, what needs to be pushed back against
Mhm.
are women that I look up to and admire greatly.
Yeah, definitely. What is like one of the most inspirational things you have learned from your students?
Mm, inspiration from my students. Hmm. I have seen firsthand levels of resilience that they should never have to embark on, but that they did.
Mm.
Um, so, for example, I had one student who I taught her in eighth grade, and then she left after eighth grade. She went to high school. In 11th grade, she had her first child. About 2 months after having her first child, her mom had a drug addiction, severe drug addiction, and she happened to be living with her mom at the time. Her mom was supposed to be watching her he must have been I feel like he was two. He was old enough to be in a stroller and to walk. So he must have been like 1.5 or 2 years old,
Mhm.
not 2 months old. Um, and he wanted to go outside and he took his stroller. He was pushing his stroller down the stairs and he fell down 2 flights of concrete stairs. Um, he has to be rushed to the hospital. He had some traumatic brain things and that he's currently dealing with. Um, but she was able to, and at that point, social services took custody of her child.
Okay.
Um, she was able to get him back. She was able to find a job, secure a new location to live. She was able to get him back and to get him in a safe place. Um, and all of the whole series of events that happened to her, because the reason that she wasn't in school was because um, her child, he had gotten sick. He couldn't go to school, so she had to stay home, which prevented her from graduating from high school,
Mm.
which prevented her from being able to go to college and getting a job that would have secured her housing earlier. So there were all of these challenges that she had to face, few of which she could have controlled, if any, she could have controlled. Um, and she made it through. She's doing okay.
Wow.
So the levels of resilience that my students go through often is inspirational for me.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just a reminder that life is not doesn't always go like you want it to go, but better is always on the other side. Like better is coming. It if it's not better, then it's not over.
Mhm.
So it better is coming.
Yeah. Wow. That is powerful story. Can't even imagine. Um, all right. I guess maybe last question, but what is, some advice, any kind of advice that you would give to everyone watching right now?
Hmm. Everyone are watching right now. One, pay attention to what's going on in the world around you.
Yes.
Um, it's essential to understand the experiences of other people. Um, see the world, think about the world, engage with the world. Even if your world is just your neighborhood, try to get outside of your neighborhood. Technology affords us the opportunity to connect. Radically imagine what possibilities are for excellence for yourself and excellence for our society. Um, embrace life in all of its gravity and all of its gladness. Find spaces of joy. Um, start small. Start small with the things we can control. Speak out when you can speak out. Um, and care for each other. Like we all need each other in this world. We are inextricably connected to one another.
Mhm.
Um, so think about how we help each other.
Yeah, that's wonderful advice. All right. I think we can wrap it up now. Thank you so, so much for coming on here to talk to me today. It's been such a pleasure. You are such an accomplished woman and have so many amazing things today. I think I learned so much from just this conversation alone, and I hope that
Awesome.
everyone else watching did as well.
And you are fantastic as well. You
So
are
much.
an outstanding interviewer. So thank you for
Thank you.
inviting me.